This is a high-profile victory for the progressive wing of the Democrats, Matt. An insurgent outsider has beaten a centrist congresswoman whose campaign received tens of millions from pro-Israel groups. We spoke to Abdul El-Sayed earlier this week, and he told me that his party will need to pay close attention to what's happened here because he's managed to tap into a wave of anti-establishment sentiment. He's managed to energise voters, particularly over the issue of Israel's actions in Gaza. It's an issue that the Democrats will have to address as they head into those all-important November midterms.
Abdul El-Sayed!
A left-wing political outsider who has just won a bruising and brutal round within his own party.
What a race. In the words of Muhammad Ali, we shook up the world.
For many Democrats, this progressive insurgent represents the change that's needed within their party.
Starting in moments when people aren't even paying attention to an election, but are paying attention to the price of gas and the price of groceries and the price of housing and the price of healthcare.
This morning, this new ad finally endorsing El-Sayed from the Senate Majority PAC, which represents the party's mainstream establishment. But they hadn't believed in the Muslim candidate until he was declared a winner. The Democrat Senate leader had this to say about the popularity of the progressives.
We are a big tent party, and being a big tent party is a strength, not a weakness.
The moderates had originally chosen to back this woman, El-Sayed's opponent, Haley Stevens, in what had become a proxy fight about the future direction of the party.
We knew that this was going to be a close race. Thank you, friends!
And it was incredibly close, Stevens narrowly losing despite having received more than $30 million in funding from AIPAC, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee. This became a focal point of the campaign, El-Sayed connecting with the concerns of younger and Arab voters in particular about Israel's actions in Gaza. It's an issue that has split the Democrats. Support for Israel is falling in the party. That has left some Jewish voters feeling alienated, and today El-Sayed addressed that divide.
And to all of my sisters and brothers of the Jewish faith, or any faith at all or no faith at all, I want you to know that my commitment to your safety, my commitment to Jewish safety, is the same commitment that I have to the safety of my own daughters.
The Democrats need to win this seat in November's general election if they're to retake the Senate, and El-Sayed will now have to take on a Republican candidate backed by Donald Trump. Could he win? Well, today the president posted his thoughts. Wayne County in Michigan is one of the most corrupt voting areas in the United States, if not the world. It is strictly third world. And then, going back to his repeated theme of fraudulent elections, he added, "Don't discount all of those fake mail-in ballots that will surprisingly show up at the last moment. Get ready for another rigged election." As well as being called a radical communist, El-Sayed has also faced constant commentary from opponents about his Muslim background and name.
My name is not raising your gas prices. My name is not taking us to war. My name is not the reason you can't afford the groceries.
If he wins in November, which won't be easy, this Michigan-born son of Egyptian immigrants will become the nation's first Muslim senator.
Well, joining me now is the Democratic strategist Jim Kessler, who spent decades on Capitol Hill and worked for the House Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, who you saw in that piece, and Dylan Wegela, a state representative for Michigan, who describes himself as a democratic socialist, as you can see from his hat. Let me start with you, Jim. I mean, as Chuck Schumer, your former boss, said, you're a big tent party, but there's trouble in the tent.
Yeah, so look, I think Abdul El-Sayed ran an inspiring race. He won. This is a seat that we need to keep. There's a lot of warning signs in that election last night. It was a lot closer than people thought. He won by about 15,000 votes. People thought he was going to win by 150,000 votes at least. And he's got work to do. He's got work to do to hold that seat. This has been the last Republican to win a seat in Michigan, the U.S. Senate, held that seat in 2001.
Right.
So this is a must keep for Democrats. And I think El-Sayed has some real work to do to convince the middle of the electorate in Michigan that he's on their side and that he has their backs and he's going to listen to them.
But Jim, what does it say that the candidate, the moderate candidate, Haley Stevens, could not defeat the other guy, although she had 4 times as much money to spend as him?
Yeah, so look, I always thought this race, the advantage would be with El-Sayed because he's run statewide before. He's a tremendous campaigner and he's got a real organization behind him, including, you know, your other guest, the Democratic Socialists of America. They're out there too. And Haley Stevens, she might have been the choice of Chuck Schumer, but she represents just one part of the state. So I always thought it was going to be an uphill race for her. And look, she almost pulled it off.
But she didn't.
Let me tell you, I mean,
I know, but she didn't, and that's the way the cookie crumbles. So let's talk to Dylan. Dylan Wegela, I mean, you've just won this primary nomination, which is amazing, but you could lose the seat, and that would be really bad news for the Democrats in terms of their ability or their efforts to capture the Senate.
Yeah, I don't think that that's going to happen. If you look at the numbers statewide across Michigan, I think in the Democratic primary, there was something like 600,000 more voters in the Democratic primary. Also, Abdul's campaign was so inspiring, it brought out this massive ground game across the state, knocking doors and talking to people, which is what wins election at the end of the day. I think Democrats are looking for a vision where we have health care, we have housing, we have food. We aren't sending our money overseas to bomb children. And I think what I want to hammer in on this is, you know, he won, and I think the number was actually closer to 10-1 outspent. They spent $70 million with AIPAC money and corporate money and still lost. And I think what that tells you is that this party is ready to move forward.
But Dylan, what is inspiring to some voters, especially young voters, is scary to older voters, you know, who are in the middle of the spectrum. And you need those voters to win the seat in November.
Well, let me tell you, I represent a working class area, and I think what this is about is putting working class people over corporations. And I don't think that that's a radical idea. And especially after you explain to folks what that vision is, they change their mind. I'll give you an example from yesterday at the polls. You know, I had somebody show up wanting to vote for the progressive candidate, but we're convinced that the progressive candidate wasn't Donovan McKinney, this is in the 13th district, but instead was Sri Tanadar. Donovan McKinney is endorsed by Detroit DSA and won, and he's the progressive candidate. The reason they thought something else was all of the dark money that's being spent, but still the sentiment was that people want a vision that is positive to move forward. I mean, we've ran moderates the last several decades, and we've been losing. I think it's time to run people with a positive vision that working class people will come out and support.
Let's put that to Jim. The moderate wing of the Democratic Party, they're just too chicken to win an election. 20 seconds.
Let me just answer your guess. Like in Michigan, we've been running moderate Democrats, and they have been winning. Elissa Slotkin won, Gary Peters won, Gretchen Whitmer won. I mean, they've been winning over and over and over again there. What El-Sayed will need to do is he will need to convince the voters of Michigan that he is not an extremist, that he is not for defunding the police, that he is not for open borders. I know Israel is a very difficult issue for a lot of Democrats, but at least that Israel has the right to exist, that people in a synagogue can feel safe because the rise of anti-Semitism is alarming in this country. And on a whole series of issues, he is going to have to show voters that he is mainstream enough to win. This is a tremendous environment for Democrats because Trump is so popular.
Dylan,
he's the only one who could lose this seat.
Is Abdul El-Sayed going to run for the nomination? In one word, yes or no?
Sorry, I couldn't hear.
Okay, never mind. Actually, we've run out of time. We're going to leave it there for another time. Listen, Dylan Wegela, Jim Kessler, thank you very much to both of you.